For our presentation, I read a 1964 article written by John Seeley that was published in the journal Film Quarterly. In this article, John Seeley pointed to the different meanings of the film's Italian and American titles. The film was released in America as The Easy Life. However, Seeley notes that the English translation of the film's original Italian title is different. It is The Overtaking, or The Passing. The overtaking that this title refers to transitions from referring to Bruno's reckless driving in the beginning of the film to referring to Roberto's transformation at the end of the film and his overtaking of Bruno as the more adventurous and the more carefree. Whereas in the beginning of the film, it was Roberto who is depicted as rigid and disinterested. By the film's final scenes, it is Bruno who he realizes unable to change and is, as Seeley says, left to go passing others without surpassing himself. The film's American title fails to get these important thematic elements across and appeals to another aspect of the film that is only present in the second half, that is the glamorous post-boom lifestyle in affluent Italian beach communities. Additionally, Seeley notes that unlike films like La Dolce Vita, The Bicycle Thief, and 8½, among others, in which characters move, quote, from one static episode to another, Il Sorpasso runs on a frantic pace. Further, he notes that the film's pace is dictated by a fast-tempo jazz score and by Vittorio Gassman's picaresque portrayal of Bruno. Consequently, the film relies on symbolic action rather than reflective dialogue to drive plot progression and to achieve its fast pace. As Seeley says, it is the film's editing, with its abrupt yet harmonious transitions, that achieves the film's fast pace and the unceasing rush of events. As such, the film's pivotal transition occurs as silently symbolic action, not deep dialogue. Through Roberto and Bruno's actions, we can see that Bruno has turned into an individual who is stuck in his reckless lifestyle, and that Bruno has become more of a free spirit, but this is never dealt with directly in the film's dialogue.
So, as Sam has already pointed out, the Italian title of the seminal Commedia all'Italiana, or comedy Italian style, Il Sorpasso, refers to the penchant for reckless overtaking or passing that characterizes the inveterate Vitelloni Bruno, and more on this term Vitelloni in just 1 second. And tragically, it refers also to Roberto, who, in his own symbolic overtaking of the latter, ends up violently killed in the film's last sequence, which we just saw together. This need to continually pass, both literally in his sports car and figuratively from one location and situation to the next, drives Bruno and eventually Roberto as well. But the question for both of these men is, where are they going? A symbol of the superficiality and ethical poverty lurking just beneath the Italian economic miracle of the late 50s and early 60s, the term Vitelloni, which I just used to describe Bruno, and which also refers to a group of men who are, quote, stuck in a condition of perennial and aimless immaturity within a society that is losing its old values without replacing them with new ones. To those men, in other words, who are at once, quote, unwilling to follow the old customs and, quote, unable to cope with change. And this is all coming from Andrea Bini in her article about Commedia all'Italiana. Certainly this is true of Bruno, whose fast-paced lifestyle literally drives him from one misadventure to the next, but who nevertheless feels justified in berating his 15-year-old daughter, who is herself perhaps an even better representative of the shallow materialism of post-war Italian society than he is. And he feels justified in berating her for entering into a loveless marriage with an old, wealthy industrialist, despite his own affairs and indiscretions. So as a symbol of the valueless striving and consumer satisfaction that characterized the boom era par excellence, Bruno and his troubled domestic life, as well as his ability to easily point out the infidelities and anxieties lurking just beneath the surface of Roberto's own apparently idyllic family home, all of this together reveals that even apparently traditional family values are the object of a profound pessimism in the film, I would argue. And I would say also that this is true of the genre to which it belongs, Commedia all'Italiana. According to Andrea Bini, this pessimism comes not out of the widely popular distortion of neorealism that emerged in the early 1950s, rosy neorealism, which I talked about a little bit earlier, but rather from the comparatively unsuccessful satires of Rossellini and Fellini. And specifically, she's talking about films like The White Sheik and Machine to Kill Bad People by those two filmmakers, which characterize or represent many of the traits, the narrative traits of commedia all'italiana, which include, among other things, the absence of romance or really any compelling female characters, the lack of a happy ending, and the presence, as we saw in the end of this film, of sudden dramatic moments punctuating or puncturing the comedy.